I'm David Martin Davies, and coming up on The Source. 2 weeks from today, Bexar County voters will begin casting ballots in an election that will decide the future of Project Marvel and a proposed new downtown arena for the Spurs. Bexar County Judge Peter Sakai is supporting Props A and B that will fund that new arena and a revitalized grounds for the rodeo. Judge Sakai joins us to talk Project Marvel and more. And later on The Source, Daniel Lubetsky, the founder of Kind Snacks and a graduate of Trinity University, is the keynote speaker at the upcoming San Antonio Startup Week. Lubetsky is also the star of the show Shark Tank. Lubetsky has spent his life working to promote international peace and understanding while also developing successful businesses. This is a community conversation. We want to hear from you. Call in at 833-877-8255. That's what's coming up on The Source. But first, this news.
Support for The Source podcast comes from UT Health San Antonio, South Texas' largest academic research institution, where what is discovered in its labs translates into life-changing patient care. More at uthealthsa.org.
Are you ready to amplify your impact through workplace giving? Many employers match donations, doubling or even tripling your support for TPR's local and global programming. Some employers even match gifts from retirees and spouses, so your contribution can go even further. Check if your company participates today by visiting tpr.org/workplacegiving.
Live from the John L. Santico studio in downtown San Antonio, this is The Source from Texas Public Radio. I'm David Martin Davies. 2 weeks from today, early voting begins for the November 4th election, and Bexar County voters will begin deciding the fate of Project Marvel and the East Side Rodeo grounds. This is an election when voters get to have their say on building a new downtown arena for the Spurs and more. To tell us more about this and other issues, we're joined by Bexar County Judge Peter Sakai. And Judge Sakai, welcome back to The Source.
Thank you, Dave.
So when people are talking about the government being shut down, that does not mean big red at the county courthouse, does it?
No, the county is going to be ready and be assessing what support we're going to have to do to make sure we protect our citizens here in Bexar County in light of the shutdowns that is ongoing and continues to be ongoing. We need to look at food insecurity. We need to look at medical health care access. Many issues that the county is going to have to be prepared to deal with.
So the last shutdown lasted just over 30 days. This one could go that long or longer. Doesn't look like any compromises in the offing. So you spoke earlier today about how this could be impacting local nonprofits.
Yeah, this morning we had Essay to Essay, sponsored by the Nonprofit Council. Scott McInich, the executive director. This was a rallying cry for our community to recognize the value of the nonprofit community and what they do to also protect our citizens from the most vulnerable: children, families, seniors, disabled, victims of crime, victims of family violence and domestic violence. We have a lot of great nonprofits that are part of the economic development and structure that make Bexar County strong. And what this rally cry was for the county, the city, the nonprofit community, the foundations, the employers, and each citizen making a commitment to support our nonprofit community to make sure they provide the services we need.
So 2 weeks from today, early voting begins for the November 4th election. We got all those state constitutional amendments on there, and we have Props A and B for Bexar County. And this is when we get to decide locally. People can have their voice on whether or not to support the downtown Spurs arena and also the East Side Rodeo grounds. What do you want people first to know, the basics? I get these things in the mail now. It keeps telling me the real deal on Props A and B. There are no taxes on San Antonio families, zero for this. Is this the main talking point?
Well, that's obviously a flyer, a mailer that the Spurs are putting out. Let me kind of set the record straight, so to speak, Dave, in regards to Proposition Referendum A. I use that word interchangeably along with Proposition Referendum B. Obviously, A focuses on our county facilities, and which means Frost Bank Center, the Joe Harry Freeman Coliseum, the Coliseum grounds. Proposition Referendum B is money for a new Spurs arena, purportedly at the downtown area. First, I need to say this. The county is not involved with Project Marvel. The county has nothing to do. That is a project of the city of San Antonio. And for questions in regards to Project Marvel, those questions need to be directed to the city. Two is you've alluded to some of the messaging that is being put out. It is true that this county venue tax, which is a tax pursuant to state statute, so there are specific limitations. And what it is it consists of the hotel occupancy tax, which is currently 1.75%, and the rental car tax, which is 5%. The referendum is asking, and it is going to be put on the referendum language, this is a tax increase, but it is not a homeowner's property tax. It is coming from the hotel occupancy tax, and the increase is 1.75% to 2%. So that people get a perspective of what that means, because I've heard, oh, well, this means a tax increase for us homeowners. This has zero impact on homeowners and renters. 1.75%, let's take a $200 hotel bill. Dave, maybe you say in those, maybe you don't. But $200 at 1.75% is $3.50, correct? That's correct my math if I'm wrong. To go to 2%, which is the maximum allowed by law, it goes to $4. So for 50 cents a day, we have the opportunity to fulfill, and I believe Proposition A, Referendum A, which is the revitalization of the east side and downtown area through a economic development, through a county-city partnership. And so I see Referendum Proposition A as an opportunity. One, why? And I understand there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of pushback, so to speak. But to stay status quo and to allow the Frost Bank Center not to be upgraded, renovated, especially when the Spurs have announced that they are leaving. They're not saying they're leaving out of town, but they're saying they are leaving the Frost Bank Center. I cannot allow the Frost Bank Center to become the next Astrodome, which is in Houston. And then two, the San Antonio Rodeo has put together a year-round business plan, bringing the rodeo industry so that that whole area can be revitalized. But the foundational piece, Dave, in Referendum Proposition A is to allow the whole grounds to be remade. Currently, it's asphalt, cement, barns with dirt floors. We need to remake that to be multi-use so that we bring in restaurants, we bring small businesses. We have to have an entertainment center. Can we make that area Pearl-like? And I really think the San Antonio Rodeo has a sustainable business plan. The model that they're looking at, and I've researched and done my homework, is it looks very similar to what Fort Worth did to its stockyards, a dilapidated area that they reformatted and make it an economic generator. And then finally, Proposition B is an opportunity for the Spurs to build a new arena. The county is not Project Marvel. Those are multi-pieces that were put together by the city of San Antonio, and I would ask that any question to Project Marvel needs to be directed to the city of San Antonio. So I've kind of said it in a real shorthand version. The county venue tax is a tourist tax. It's paid by people who use hotel rooms, and rail car tax. No impact on homeowner property tax. And, we can get into questions of what does the financing look like. It's very similar to what we did for the baseball stadium that's going up on the northwest sector over by San Antonio Independent School District Administration over by the Fox Tech campus.
Right up the creek from here.
Yes, right.
So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. Let's go to a caller. The number is 833-877-8255, 833 TPR Talk. And we have Susan. And Susan, you're on the air with Judge Sakai.
Hi, Judge. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So I'm curious. So the Stone report, which is the report that the Spurs commissioned for the arena, shows that the county will actually lose money when the Spurs move out because the tax revenues are less than the amount that the county now gets from the Spurs. And as I understand Prop A, the county will have to pick up the operating costs from the Spurs for the Frost Bank Center. The Spurs are there 40 to 41 nights a year. The rodeo's only promised to pick up 20 of those nights. And then the Frost Bank will be competing with the new arena for concerts and other events. So my question is, has the county studied whether there'll need to be an operating subsidy for the Frost Bank Center? And if so, can any, like there is what has been for decades for the Alamo Dome until recently, and if so, can that be paid from the venue tax, or does it have to be paid from the general fund?
We're going to have to hit a break. So Judge Sakai has a minute to marinate on the question, and we'll come right back, Susan, with his answer. That's a really good, sophisticated, well thought out question, the kind we love here. And so we're going to go to break. It's a 1 minute break, and the number is 833-877-8255, 833-TPR. This is The Source on Texas Public Radio.
Support for this podcast of The Source comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company. They are committed to helping policyholders build strong and thriving businesses through their exceptional service. More at texasmutual.com/TexansDeliver. Texas Mutual. Texans get it.
You're listening to The Source on Texas Public Radio. I'm David Martin Davies. In the next half hour, we're going to be joined by Daniel Lubetsky. He is with Shark Tank. He will be the keynote speaker at the San Antonio Startup Week. But right now, let's go to Judge Peter Sakai to pick up on the answer for Susan's question about the financing of leaving the Frost Center now and what happens with all that.
Great question, Susan. What I would tell you and the public is there's one entity that has not been mentioned that needs to be brought in. And I've asked Dave Davies to invite the San Antonio Rodeo, the San Antonio Livestock Exposition, which is a nonprofit, and the Coliseum Advisory Board. The rodeo is executive director is Cody Davenport. The CAB, Coliseum Advisory Board, executive director is Derek Howard. They have done the assessment of how much it's going to cost to maintain that facility if and when the Spurs leave. Now, the Spurs have indicated that they will most likely vacate toward the end of the lease, which is 2032. So we got 6 years to figure this out. One of the things that I cannot allow to happen, Susan, is to do nothing, to maintain status quo. Because if and when the Spurs leave, then what's going to happen is the Frost Bank Center will either needs to be upgraded, renovated, and has to be able to compete, as you just said. How's it going to compete? One of the things that we're envisioning is, one, the Coliseum Advisory Board is ongoing. Think about all the graduations, the shows, car shows, boat shows, garden shows, all these shows that the Coliseum Advisory Board is sponsoring right now. They have given me their economic projections. The rodeo, in the numbers that they have provided, and that's the reason why the rodeo needs to come in and explain that, is that they generate nearly $375 million a year in economic generation. And so what people are confused is, well, how do you take that 1 month rodeo? People need to understand the rodeo is an industry. It is bigger than sports industry because there's no particular season. What you have to do is look at the Fort Worth Stockyards is the model. 2 is, if you go to Vegas, it's called the South Point Casino Resort Rodeo Arena, where rodeo is run year wide. The other aspect of rodeo, which is really exciting to me, is they'll explain that they want to bring in the culture diversity that the cowboy culture brings, the vaquero from Mexico, South America, the black cowboy experience. And what we know is if we integrate that, we have an opportunity to remake that particular area and revitalize it. That's the reason why this project is not Project Marvel. This is an economic revitalization of East Side and downtown economic development by a county-city partnership. Now, I get it. Project Marvel is wrapped in. It was David, you led with that. And I've said the county is not part of Project Marvel. You'll have to bring the city in to explain that. And so we have an opportunity to make a year-round business plan so that the Frost Bank Center does not become the next Astrodome, which means it sits and rots.
So I get that the county has nothing to do with Project Marvel, but it certainly has something to do with the downtown proposed Spurs Arena. And if Proposition B lays an egg on November the 4th, if voters don't go for it, that would be, basically the project's dead, I would think.
Obviously, the whole group, the city, the county, the Spurs would have to regroup and decide. And then understand that the other dynamic, and maybe people have a hard time understanding this, but the rodeo has outgrown the 1 month. They need to expand. And so they have come up with a comprehensive economic development plan that I think, Susan, you've been making right. Where's the numbers? And I believe that's why I have asked Dave to invite Cody Davenport, Derek Howard to come in here and explain that so that the public has an understanding of Proposition Referendum A. In regards to B, as far as I'm concerned, we are putting the county contribution. We actually put a cap, 25%. Up to $311 million. The Spurs are putting $500 million, the city's putting in $489 million, and the county's putting $311 because when the first discussion came out, the first discussion was really between the Spurs and the city of San Antonio discussing off record, so to speak, about a new downtown. When the county found out in my first year, I then said, no, the county needs to be in part of that, and we have been part. And so the city put out Project Marvel. And like I said, right now, the Spurs, as far as the county's concerned, we have given them now where they put that new venue, that's up to the Spurs and the city and the term sheet they've come to an agreement. So there are other partners, stakeholders that need to come into this conversation.
Yeah, but can you concede at least that this is how voters are looking at this? This is their opportunity because I know that Mayor Gina Ortiz-Jones has been talking vaguely about having a second vote. I don't know if that will happen, but this is the vote that voters have in Bexar County on Project Marvel, pretty much.
And Dave, that's the reason why initially when the Spurs came to it and wanted an election earlier, they wanted this election back in May with the city elections. And I said, for that particular specific reason, I don't believe there was no information out whatsoever. And so I get it, and I get the pushback, or I get the confusion, or I get the misinformation. We are doing our very best. We mean the county is trying to make sure that people understand the dynamics of Referendum A and Referendum B and how this is a east side downtown revitalization of economic development by a county-city partnership. That's what this election's about.
All right, let's go to Dan. Dan, you're on the air with Judge Peter Sakai. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey, good morning. This is Dan. I just wanted to ask a question here regarding the funding for the Spurs Arena. Why is it that it's the responsibility of the city taxpayer to fund 2/3 of this or 3/4 of it versus the owners themselves just going ahead and purchase the property and pay to have the facilities built and all? Because this is another tax on the locals as well as tourists, because there's not just tourists that visit the city. The tax extends beyond just hotels or rental cars. It goes into restaurants, any entertainment venues in downtown San Antonio. And this is a perpetual tax. It doesn't go away. The city will be on the hook for maintaining infrastructure and the facility itself. Why is it that the Spurs owners, who stand to profit handsomely from this investment, why aren't they just going ahead and pay 100% for this and relieve the San Antonio and county taxpayers of the burden of these additional taxes?
All right, Dan, thank you for that question. So is that true, first off, that this is a tax that extends beyond people who get hotel rooms and rent cars?
This is a tourist tax. In regards to this specific referendum, it's a county venue tax. It is a hotel occupancy tax, and it is a rental car tax. Statute says it needs an election. That's why the counties have an election. This has to be approved by the voters. And I understand we're processing all this information so that voters make an educated decision. I will respect the decisions of the voters. Okay. But the tourist tax is not a homeowner or rental tax. It is not on homeowner property tax.
He mentioned downtown restaurants. Is that,
Well, I would assume he's talking about sales tax. I assume those are the other buckets of money. And those questions really specifically need to go to the city of San Antonio and how they made their decision for the amount of money. Okay. We put a limit. And what I insisted on, and that's the reason why it's 2 referendums, let's commit to the Frost Bank Center for the reasons I've given. Let's commit to the Joe Harry Freeman Coliseum. Let's commit to the Coliseum grounds to remake that particular area. There's another discussion that is not part of this referendum is the Willow, and I've said it out loud, Willow Springs Golf Course. Why can't we remake that and put a...
That's across the street.
That's across the street. And why can't that become an economic generator and put in a hotel and becoming a tourist destination? Because Salado Creek runs right in the middle of it. What a beautiful piece of property that just with additional tax incentives through perhaps the venue tax or our bond tax, we could remake that area, deindustrialize that whole area. Dave, you said it earlier off the
before we went
on the air about all that area and the limitations. Railroad tracks to one side, railroad tracks at warehouses, and then Salado Creek and the golf course. Let's take those assets and reimagine what the east side can be.
Well, and to the wider question that Dan asked, which was about why is public dollars involved in this at all? Why not tell the Spurs, you want an arena, get it yourself?
I think Peter John Holt, and I take him at his word, has said that he needs the public financing. And obviously, the Spurs have given the county and the city, especially the county, we will be leaving the Frost Bank Center. Now, that he has assured me he's not leaving town. And one of the stipulations in the term sheet is a commitment, a long-term commitment. I believe it's a 30-year commitment to stay in San Antonio in order to receive this type of public financing. I take Peter John Holt at his word, understanding that the Spurs are a business. And as far as I'm concerned, the Spurs are a valuable corporate citizen, more importantly, a philanthropic contributor. Dave, we just had an essay to essay on the nonprofit council to support our nonprofits. I know for a fact that the Spurs are a valuable contributor to the many nonprofits in our community. And you see it through the Coyote, through the players. You see it as a corporate obligation that they fulfill. I believe the Spurs have great value, and that's the reason why I believe this is a good investment for the county.
I want to ask you about something other than this county vote, Prop A, Prop B. This coming weekend, we have people who were survivors or the descendants of the survivors of Crystal City, which was the Japanese incarceration camps that were set up by the U.S. government during World War II. They will be coming into town to come together. What's happening there? What's your involvement?
Dave, this is a recognition of what has been called in prior years as the Japanese American internment camps, for which my father and my paternal grandparents were incarcerated during World War II only because they were Japanese Americans, a violation of their constitutional rights. The government, back in 1988, issued a formal apology and reparations for that gross violation. It's been a significant event in my life. And what it is, it's a recognition of when we sometimes panic in times of crisis and why the rule of law is so important. Adherence to our Constitution. And that's in my lifeline. That's my blood, so to speak, as a former district court judge. We need to follow the rule of law. And this is the reason why this Crystal City pilgrimage, which will start on Friday, I believe at the Doubletree Hotel on 410 in McCullough, somewhere up on the north central area, they're going to have a conference the weekend. They'll have a formal, obviously, ceremony in Crystal City to recognize that that was one of the internment camps of Japanese Americans that were incarcerated during. Also, too, Jan Jarbo Russell wrote a book, I believe, The Train to Crystal City, which she documented the German Americans, Italian Americans, and the Japanese Americans that were incarcerated as a result of their citizenship and the perception that they were enemies to the country. And
her big question was why? Why did this happen? And her conclusion was that they were gathered as pawns for trading prisoners.
Oh, that's the horrific backstory of Peruvian Japanese that were brought to America to be traded, so to speak, for American POWs.
So the laws that were used at that time, which we now know to be completely unjust and unjustified, are still on the books today and are being used today.
It's my opinion, yes.
In immigration.
Immigration, and we saw that in 9/11 with the persecution of the Muslim
Still not
Americans.
learned the lessons.
That's the reason why the rule of law and these type of conferences and recognitions are so important. We got to keep that history alive so that we don't repeat history.
and also the discussion from the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, saying diversity is not needed in our armed forces.
I totally disagree. I embrace diversity. I embrace equity. I embrace inclusion. And I believe that's my constitutional right, and nobody's taking that away from me.
All right, we ran out of time here, but we're going to have you back as soon as we can. Judge Peter Sakai, a lot of questions out there still. Couldn't get all the callers on the air to talk about what's happening with the county and with the rodeo grounds and with what's happening with the Spurs new arena proposal. But I got to thank you. And then when we come back from the break, we're going to be joined with the kind shark, Daniel Lubetsky. He is a star of the show Shark Tank. He's going to be in San Antonio as a keynote speaker for Startup Week. And this is The Source on Texas Public Radio.